Needless to say, and just for the record, in my 10 years of experience in Spain, I have not found Spaniards to be in any way or shape or form evil.
Well, that's what you think anyway.
Lisps, laziness, and evil Spaniards. A couple weeks ago, we asked you guys what your assumptions are about Spaniards, about, well, people like Yoly. And we got a lot of replies.
And today we want to dive into some of the most common or interesting of your responses.
So that's it. Should we start?
Yeah, venga, let's go. Right, so we got a comment from Isaac who said, one thing that really bothers me is the thinking that Spaniards speak with a lisp. Okay, I've heard this one a lot, people talking about the Spanish lisp. And once and for all,
here it is, guys, waiting for it.
Spaniards, we don't speak with a lisp. Okay, so in some parts of Spain, mainly central and north, when you see in a word the letters Z and A o U, so tha, tho, thu, and then the letter C accompanied by E and I, so the, it is pronounced the. But that is not a lisp, that is just the way it is pronounced. If we had a lisp, then the name of our country would be España.
And it's not, right?
No. Now, there's some different ways we speak here. So, in some southern parts of Spain, we have the phenomenon called ceceo. So now this is meaning that the S sound is also pronounced th. So,
but again, it's not a lisp, it's just how people speak, right?
Yeah, so they are able to pronounce the S, they just choose not to do it.
That's key, that is key, that is key, right?
They just don't feel like saying soso for something that is tasteless. They like to say zozo. And then we have in other also Andalusian parts of Spain, the ceseo, and that is everything is pronounced with an S. Again, they can say the, but they just don't feel like it. So, cerveza, the way you say it in Madrid and North or Castilla-La Mancha, cerveza becomes cerveza. Okay,
Maria told us that she gets frustrated that TV shows compare Spain and Mexico along with mariachis included. Ay, 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 ay. Canta y no llores. Now, this one kind of I find a little bit confusing because Spain and Mexico are in two very different parts of the world. And Elisa said that she gets frustrated because there's often the assumption that here in Spain we eat spicy food and we eat tacos and things like that. Now,
all the time, right?
You can get tacos in Spain, like you can in Los Angeles or
at
Tokyo.
Mexican restaurants mainly.
At Mexican restaurants. And if you Google, are Spain and Mexico the same? There was a worrying number of results and also articles helping people understand the differences. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here. Obviously, I can understand that there's this little bit of confusion and some cultural overlap because in the end, Spain invaded and colonized Mexico, so it's natural that some culture goes there. Obviously, the language goes there. But apart from that, there are a lot of differences. As for the culture, there are mariachis sometimes in the Puerta del Sol.
But don't be confused, you're not in Mexico.
You're not, trust us. But also there's Fat Spider-Man in the Plaza Mayor, but nobody thinks that they're in New York when they're in the Plaza Mayor, so go figure. But anyway, Spain and Mexico, very different.
Okay, so one follower said that they're sick of hearing that Spain is all flamenco, san, and castanets. I'm from Asturias, they said, and the north is very different. Okay, James, so I think we're a little bit guilty of this one.
I think you might be right. We have been doing some self-reflecting.
So I'm afraid we might have a little bit of a Madrid-centric view here. In a recent video, we got called out by a few people saying, hey, I'm from Galicia and I never got a flamenco set.
Your loss.
Or some other people saying, I'm from Asturias and there is no paella pans around me here.
Fabada Asturiana, right? That's what they're having more like. I mean, I'm sure there is paella in Asturias, people eat it, but yeah.
Exactly. So a little bit of a self-reflection there.
And on that sun side, that Spain is all sun, that image, which is frustrating for this person. I mean, we got another message from Timmy. He had the assumption that the Baleares were all balmy and tropical all year round. He said, I've busted both of those myths by freezing my off in Mallorca in December. So obviously this comes from the fact that Spain has long promoted itself as a sun, sand destination.
But let's recap some data about Spain here. There are 17 regions subdivided into many more provinces, each with their own unique culture. There is one official language, Spanish, and 4 co-official languages, so Catalan/Valencian, Galician, Basque, and Aranese, which is spoken in the Aran Valley.
Bet you've never heard of that one.
And there are all kinds of climates. So we have a continental, we have oceanic, we have Mediterranean climate. So very varied, yes.
Moving on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm excited about this next one. I think it's really interesting. It comes from a quote in an El País article that somebody from Norway said. They said, in Norway, we have a saying to pull a Spanish one. We use it when someone ignores the rules or cheats in some way. In my country, we are real sticklers for the rules, and that clashes with the roguish nature of Spaniards.
That's so terrible.
The roguish nature of Spaniards. So this is interesting for me because I have the perception that growing up, the Spaniard in popular fiction and popular movies was often represented as the one who was like dressed in black, was sort of scheming in the shadows and was, well, a little bit sort of evil. And, you know, it makes me think of obviously Monty Python, the representation of the Spanish Inquisitors there, and also Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride.
Montoya.
And what else did he say? Do you remember?
You killed my father.
Prepare to die.
Obviously, at the beginning of the movie, he was represented as a baddie. He then became a goodie and he was great. So there was a bit of a shift there. And in fact, I found an article online, which I couldn't read apart from the title because you'd have to pay to access it, which is called
So very insightful for you, huh?
Yeah, I really got to the core of it, you know. But it was called Why Spaniards Make Good Bad Guys, Sergi Lopez and the Persistence of the Black Legend in Contemporary European Cinema.
Ole.
Serious reading, which is about a Spanish actor who generally always plays bad guys. And so what this is referring to is the so-called Black Legend of Spain, or La Leyenda Negra.
Getting intense here.
Very intense. The Black Legend of Spain theory is that Northern European propaganda made things that Spain did kind of worse or painted them in a worse light. I feel like this comment from our friend in Norway could a little bit be rooted in some of that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I would ask you, if you're in, say, you know, more like a culture that I grew up in, say in the UK or US, New Zealand, Australia, do you have that perception that you grew up seeing Spaniards painted in that light? I'm very curious to know in popular fiction and popular movies. Needless to say, and just for the record, in my 10 years of experience in Spain, I have not found Spaniards to be in any way or shape or form evil.
Well, that's what you think anyway.
So a couple of people also said that they love how accommodating and understanding Spaniards are when they're trying to speak Spanish. They really, you know, compliment them at their level of Spanish, and I've always found that. But maybe almost too complimentary.
No,
in
your
a way.
Spanish is great.
Thank you, baby. Let's be honest, my Spanish is good, but it can always be better. And so I'm really trying to keep my language level up. And to do that, I've been using a lot more language learning apps. And you might remember last year that we did a sponsored video for Rosetta Stone, and I'm still using it and I'm really, really enjoying it. And so they've agreed to sponsor this video as well. And here's why I keep coming back to Rosetta. It is full immersion. Like, there's no English in the learning. I mean, the top menu bar so you can navigate around the app is obviously in English, but it's all in Spanish. And what this means is your brain isn't kind of like translating everything into English. Your mind is actually working in Spanish when you're in the app, which is exactly what it's like when you're living in a place or when you're visiting a place. So you can use your phone, it has an app, also the desktop, and once you get into there, it's really easily laid out. You can set up a learning plan with goals, you know, 30 minutes a day, like a 6-week program, 5 days a week or something like that. And it's divided all up into topics. So you've got everything from language basics to greetings to vacation to dining to tourism, which is perfect for when you come to Spain.
Right.
And you've also got things like home and health, which is perfect for a pandemic and being in lockdown. So you're covered. And so by virtue of being wonderful members of the Spain Reveal community, you guys get lifetime access to Rosetta Stone for only $179. They have 25 languages in there in the app that you can learn all of them. You can spend your entire life learning them. You just have to click the link in the description to take advantage of that offer. Heads up, the offer expires in a few weeks on the 31st of March. So you got to get in there to take advantage of that offer before then. So Yoly, what are you going to learn? What language are you going to learn?
I'm going to learn Japanese for that trip that we have pending.
Ah, yes. Have we got our refunds on the airfares yet?
I don't think so. All right, so Alex said, there is a perception Spaniards are lazy, especially when you compare it to the US work ethic. We covered this in previous videos before. Actually, data shows that Spaniards, we work longer hours than the average in the European Union.
So connected to this, we also got a lot of comments about the notion of the mañana culture, which is a little bit effectively saying Spaniards are lazy, they'll do things mañana instead of now. Somebody said, I think they were from Sweden, said that that is a term that's used.
Sweden, nice.
Maybe it wasn't Sweden, I don't know. Saying that, you know, that's a little bit of a statement people would make, like, oh, mañana, implying that they will do the job at a later time, obviously using the Spanish language. And another woman who lives in London said actually in her company, Spaniards are really in demand because they're known as hard workers. but sometimes there is the odd mañana mañana comment that is made and it rubs her the wrong way. And what this got me thinking is a little bit about how we think about time differently in different cultures. And I found this article in the Harvard Business Review.
Getting intense again.
Very intense, my research, where a guy was about to give a presentation to a Belgian company. And the Belgian company decided that he should do 2 presentations, one to the Flemish speakers and one to the French speakers. He didn't understand why until he gave the 2 presentations, and then he understood. He said when he was giving the presentation to the Flemish side of the company, it was supposed to start at 3 p.m. Everybody turned up at 2:59. Boom. And when he gave the presentation to the French side of the company, people started drifting into the meeting, the presentation, at about 3:05. And that really reminded me a little bit of Spain, where there is that leeway a little bit. It's, you know, things don't necessarily have to start right on the time. There's an expectation you can be a couple minutes late, things like that. And so what this person said in the article, he said the 2 Belgian cultures clearly had differing views towards time. One was highly guided by it, the Flemish side. The other, the French side, approached it loosely, giving more weight to personal interactions and relationships.
Yeah, more organic, you know.
So I think a lot of assumptions that people make about Spain or other cultures are actually misunderstandings really about that culture. And when you think that that culture needs to adjust to your way of thinking about time or other things, it's actually a form of cultural superiority, I think, right? And there were other comments that weren't just simply like Spaniards don't work hard, but were saying, okay, Spaniards work hard, but there's inefficiency in the work environment or something like that. And I guess what that made me think again is inefficiency as to what?
Yeah.
So if you compared it to inefficiency in terms of your judgment of efficiency as arriving to the meeting on time or making a certain amount of money in a day or whatever that is, then maybe there is difference in inefficiencies. But if you're talking about efficiency of making personal relationships, then maybe Spain is more efficient or something like that. What is your priority and what do you want to be efficient at, right?
It's a 4-letter word.
Yeah. Okay, quick fire round. We got so many comments that we need to like hit a lot of them really fast because they're simple ones. So we don't eat rice or heavy things for dinner.
Mainly not.
Got it. We take a long vacation in summer.
It used to be like that, less and less now.
Spaniards hate the English.
I've heard that one sometimes. I tell you what I've heard a lot is, oh, there's no way you can eat a good meal in England. And this is one that I'm always telling people, like, no, there is actually really good food in England.
Fighting the fight.
Yeah.
Somebody said that Spaniards are good in bed.
Of course we are.
Very good. Always eating out and not cooking at home. Spaniards are always eating out, not cooking at home.
We do socialize out in the street. We go to bars a lot, but that doesn't mean that we are eating every single meal out. We cook.
What about the macho culture? There's a few comments about macho culture in Spain.
Oh, we made a whole video about that, and just, have a look. It's really interesting. Just don't go down the rabbit hole of the comments.
It got a bit ugly pretty quickly, so. Okay, this one I found a little bit odd because while there were a lot of comments about how Spaniards are super friendly, there were a number I was surprised about how Spaniards are rude. That's an assumption because I don't find Spaniards rude at all.
Thank you.
But let's dive into some of the details. So someone said Spaniards stare a lot. Now, yeah, when you're walking down the street, often Spaniards will lock your gaze and hold your gaze, right?
But that's not rude, right?
Exactly. Now, walking into you, bumping into you, when I first moved here, I was like a pinball, like bumping into people all the time. I'd be
sorry,
and feel like they didn't even notice. So yeah, that does happen. But again, so less personal space.
Again, that's not rude.
No, exactly. You're proving the point, Yoly. Interrupting. So, I mean, the idea that Spaniards interrupt a lot. I mean, conversations are more fluid here, I would say.
I would say, though, that it does get a little bit on my nerves. Sometimes I struggle to get my word in with friends. Yeah.
And someone else said that, you know, Spaniards, the way they communicate, they're more critical, more blunt. Maybe the way of speaking is a little more direct at times. And this made me think about some other comments that were made that customer service is bad here in Spain or can be bad. And, you know, maybe I'm not talking much about sort of bars or things like that. I might be more talking about you call a call center or something like that. I do remember when I first met Yoly and I didn't speak Spanish, I would watch you speaking to your mother. I thought you were fighting with her all the time.
50% of the time.
But you were having a conversation. It just sounded a lot more heated than would a conversation with my mother in terms of tone.
Yeah. No.
And that makes me then think about the customer service. You know, I might perceive the customer service as bad, but the person giving the customer service doesn't think it's bad, right? At all. There were also some comments about rude service. Someone said, I heard they're not, Spaniards, polite in restaurants. I assume they mean the servers. And that they're rude in restaurants when serving you. Now, we spoke about this in a recent video about the difference between surly service and bad service. And I think there, again, might be a misunderstanding about maybe there's not enough pleases and thank yous and the way the service happens. So this brought me into another concept, which I thought was interesting. I'm getting intense here again.
Intense!
Got my intense hat on. Was that there's a theory about there being a difference between high context and low context cultures. So a low context culture is a culture where in communication, whether verbal or written, things are really spelled out, very clear. Yeah. Whereas in a high context culture, things are not as clearly spelled out, and it's more you have to read the signs of what somebody might actually be saying or meaning, or what the rules are and things like that. So in this example, say New Zealand would be a lower context culture and Spain would be a higher context culture. Right. So I think there could be something here about the different high context, low context culture that people from a low context culture coming to Spain really expect different things, right? More misunderstandings. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Have you heard about it before?
Very interesting.
If you want to keep exploring stereotypes about Spain, we did make another video a couple years ago, link to it up here, where you can keep learning about all the misunderstandings you're making about the Spanish culture. Bye.
Ciao.